Welcome to this episode of the Deliberate Leader podcast. My name is 𝗲𝗂𝗁𝗂𝗀𝗃, and this week I am joined by Caelan 𝗪𝗪. I've known Caelan for a long time, and he's been a great support to my business over the years, from everything with digital marketing, setting up community networks, and now AI. So I wanted to really introduce you to him so he could also help you. He's been an enormous help and support, and he's just one of those people that is at the forefront of all things technology, loves to play with it, loves to create. And for me, that works, right? Someone else is doing that heavy thinking before I need to do it. So what do we know about Caelan, and why is he so important for you today to listen to and hopefully to learn from? Caelan's essence is that he helps individuals, and particularly leaders, learn AI so they can think faster, create smarter, and lead confidently into the future of work. He is an AI educator, he's a speaker, and he's a founder of the AI Coaching Academy, which is a networking group that you can join. We've got the link for you, a community for ambitious professionals to practice using the tools of the future. You're going to love this conversation. I certainly loved having it with Caelan. Talk to you soon. Welcome to this week's episode of the Deliberate Leader podcast. I'm joined by a very great colleague and dear friend of mine. We've known each other a long time. Caelan 𝗪𝗪, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me, Rita.
It's so good to have you on the show. I know we've had countless conversations, but never in this format, so I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Now, for what it's worth, and not that maybe you and I will care, who knows, maybe others will care, but Caelan and I have known each other now, it's over 5 years. We were
Easily,
part of the
yeah.
same kind of study group in terms of business school, and Caelan's helped me out in a bunch of projects with a technology lens and with all sorts of things from a marketing lens, which I know is in your past life. But today, Caelan, I'm really looking forward to our conversation on deliberate leadership, but particularly what you're seeing in the new frontier, now probably not so new, of AI. So welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's new for all of us. None of us are AI experts, and it's changing every field so rapidly that we're all having to learn how we can adapt this new technology into our daily work.
Yeah. So Caelan, how did you, I mean, obviously the area has been around a while. I'm learning that it's been around longer than what we think, but how did you come into this area and really forge your path in your area of thought leadership and AI?
Yeah, well, when ChatGPT first came out in December of 2022, I was really excited, and I started playing with it. I started hosting some playtime events. I'd throw up a LinkedIn event and say, "Hey, let's play with ChatGPT," to get people's hands into the tools. And I had been a marketer for a long time, and that was my field. I was a digital marketer. I wrote a book called Marketing Yourself: How to Elevate Your Personal Platform to the Next Level. And I wrote this for authors, coaches, and speakers, because those were my communities. I'm a professional public speaker and a business coach and an author. And I found quickly that the sorts of things I was doing as a marketing automation expert, taking an author's book and slicing and dicing it into social media posts and newsletters, uh, AI can do that much faster. And so the marketing business dried up, and I saw all my colleagues looking around and saying, "Hey, what happened to the industry?" And so I thought, if you can't beat them, join them. And I jumped over into AI, and I started teaching AI training workshops, helping people learn how to use these tools of the future. And it's been incredible. We're seeing exponential growth in a lot of different fields. And now people are just trying to figure out, how can I participate in this exponential expansion?
Yeah. And I guess, for leaders, and I know obviously having been in that role still, leading teams now, we're so time poor. And often the thing,
Mhm.
that I was talking about with some colleagues recently is how can we efficiently and effectively keep up with kind of the pace of everything that's changing, particularly from a technology perspective? Because otherwise, we end up being laggards really, and having to ask our kids to use remote controls and those kinds of things, which I can and have often found myself doing. It sounds like you've been able to give leaders some bite-sized, opportunities to learn and learn quickly.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that eat up a leader's time that AI happens to handle particularly well. Sending meeting notes, sending action items from the transcripts of the meetings that you're having. I've heard it said that in the CEO of the future is going to be reading the AI generated summaries of all the meetings that are happening in the organization. And the
Yeah.
ability to curate large volumes of information, this is the skill of the AI operator. And
Mm.
as leaders, a lot of your best work is spent in one-to-one communication, where you're talking with your direct reports, you're uncovering what the actual issues are, you're helping them move projects forward. And role playing the difficult interactions is something that AI happens to be uniquely good at. You can
Mm.
feed AI a personality profile and say, hey, I have to have a challenging conversation about this thing. You throw on voice mode and you practice it for 15 minutes. And you can ask your AI partner to give you feedback. How could this conversation have gone better? If I wanted to get to this destination in the conversation, how else could I have gotten there? What other destinations could I have in this conversation? That strategic thinking that helps us do leadership well, I think that's something that AI is particularly good at.
Yeah, and using it in that way, I guess it makes me think of almost your own mentor in your pocket, coach in your pocket, dare I say it, but
Yeah.
just someone that you can really bounce with. Um,
Yeah.
so how effective is it at doing that? Like in terms of, the research that you've done, the clients that you support, how effective is it when you do want to, as you say, move more into that strategic thinking, maybe bounce some ideas, maybe role play, have some conversations?
Hmm.
Is it really kind of taking over that role that a human would once upon a time play?
I don't think it's taking over human roles. There's some things that AI does really well, and there's some things that humans do really well. We have ethical judgment. We have creative taste. And when we use those uniquely human roles and we use AI to amplify or augment the things that robots could do anyway, then it frees us up to focus on the specific things we do really well. And I spend a lot of time in AI coaching because my online community, the AI Coaching Academy, helps ambitious professionals practice using the tools of the future. And one of the things I teach people is how to have a coaching conversation with voice mode. And so you can upload a book of Tony Robbins or Benjamin Franklin or any author that's inspired you, and you can say to your large language model, coach me in the style of this person using their IP. Talk me through this issue I'm dealing with. But is it effective? The same answer is a coaching conversation effective? Some coaches are great and some coaches are terrible. And in the right environment, a coaching conversation can be transformative. But the challenge with AI coaching, Rita, is that there's no human to set the container. There's this coaching container where you say, okay, we're going to sit down, we're going to be here from 3 to 4 p.m. And even if you get uncomfortable in a conversation, I'm just going to sit here as your coach and I'm going to wait patiently. And I'm going to ask you this question again to get you to dig deep and answer. But if you're having a large language model conversation and you think, oh, this makes me feel uncomfortable, I'm going to turn this off and go walk the dog. Then you can get away. There's no container there. And so one of the challenges is how do we manufacture that coaching container? And so this is part of what I teach in the AI Coaching Academy is how do we create an environment where we can have a transformative coaching conversation, even though there's not another human participating with us.
Mm. So you mentioned, I mean, obviously the things that you mentioned we can't do, ethical judgment, creative, that creativity that we bring to it, and I guess also empathy. But I find that the chats are getting pretty good from an empathy perspective.
Hmm. They
So
are.
so do you think that we will, that ethical leadership, because we're setting in a set of rules effectively that we're saying please follow.
Hmm.
How far away are we from being at a point where we can set those parameters and that it will largely play back that role in a way that fits our moral code, our ethics, human values, decency, all those kinds of things? How far away are
Yeah.
we?
Um, there's the first zero-person company that is on its way to $1 million. There's no leadership in this company. It's literally an AI agent that has started selling its own product and managing its own service. But there needs to be a human for responsibility.
Mm.
Permissions are the bottleneck. right now. And you could set up an AI agent that starts its own company and start selling its own products, but for tax purposes, for liability purposes, there still needs to be a human in the loop. And I think even with, we're seeing agents that can do things like they can trade on derivatives markets. They can do a lot of things that are traditionally human work, but there needs to be a human to take responsibility both for, okay, if we're going to pay this money right now, a human needs to be the one that makes the transfer because there's limited capability. An AI agent can't own a bank account. And so there's these bottlenecks, these gates where human permission has to allow an agent to move forward. And I think if we can find where those gates are, where human permission is really required, that's the moat. That's where human roles are always going to be important. Does that
Mm.
make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it is setting those parameters. And also, I guess, well, I mean, the AI can respond. I was thinking from an agility perspective, the human, has multiple data sources, and not just data as we know it, kind of define, the type you'll look and research, but intel and opinions and advice and that moral code and what's going to be,
Yeah.
in alignment with that company's values, their own personal values, all of that.
Yeah, yeah. What I find that is really helpful with the human role is, an AI agent can make 70 revisions. How do you know when it's done?
Yeah.
The agent will tell you, hey, here's one, and it'll keep doing another one for you as many times as you ask it to. But it
Yeah.
takes a human with their ethical judgment to say, this is what I'm looking for, and this is what's going to match. So now we're going to move it out into market.
Yeah, yeah. So that I guess that it's that curation really, and
Hmm.
knowing what you're looking for, because as you
Yeah.
say, it will just keep going, and then we've seen the hallucinations. I think it's getting better at at not hallucinating as much, but
Hmm.
it does require that human to go, yep, that's what I'm looking for, and
Yeah.
now I'm ready to use it. Um,
Hmm.
so I've heard, and I've spoken to a couple of colleagues that are in that world of neuroscience and just kind of brain health and health in general, and they are feeling very concerned actually about the impacts on our brain. So um,
Hmm.
what's your view on that? Like, is it? I'm hearing that it's that it's having the use of AI means that it is creating a laziness, which therefore might impact our neurological health going forward. We've seen
Hmm.
early signs of research saying it's shrinking the brain. It's looking like it's creating, similar impacts to that of dementia and Alzheimer's disease. Has your research kind of led you to any of those avenues, and what's your view on that?
Yeah, well, my understanding of neuroscience is that if you want strong neurons, use it or lose it. If the neurons that fire together wire together is how I've heard it said. And if we're not using critical thinking skills because we're outsourcing that to AI, then we're not going to be as good at it anymore. If we look at the evolution from calligraphy to the typewriter, the general handwriting of the human race has definitely come down now that we're not needing to write things by hand. Is that a loss? Or have we suddenly made this one type of artistic expression, being able to do calligraphy well, have we made that more valuable at the same time that we've amplified the communication capabilities of a whole lot of people that never would have had good penmanship? I do think there's a change. I think there's a shift in our neurological capabilities, but unlike a lot of other people, I don't think it's a bad thing. I think if we're going to evolve as a species from Homo erectus, where we're just standing up, to Homo techne, where we've developed this symbiosis with technology, it's going to result in some changes to our neurology. But it also makes the older types of thinking more valuable. If you're able to think from first principles, if you have a strong grounding in the humanities, if you're able to make connections from very disparate bodies of information, that becomes valuable if everybody has access to infinite information. And so I think it is going to change, but I think it's going to be for the better.
Yeah, yeah. That you mentioned, and just before we hit record, we were having a brief conversation. You mentioned that impact of the humanities, and I did say to you, hold that thought. I think that would be great for part of our discussion. In your mind, what's still really important to teach, kids in particular, but also adults, and if we're adopting that principle of being forever learners, what role does humanities still play, and making sure, I guess, that it's not interfering. Uh, or really colliding with our use of technology as we're now using it.
Yeah, well, the works of the humanities that have endured for centuries, they endured because they were fundamentally great. I went to a small college in Santa Fe, New Mexico called St. John's College, and they do the Great Books program there. There's no tests, no grades, no exams. We read the great books of history and then we talked about them. And so that's always been my fundamental view of education is this is how scholars for centuries have educated themselves is they read the work of ancient scholars and then talked about them because they're challenging and they force us to ask challenging questions of ourselves. And I think that's ironically the skill of the future is being well versed in the humanities. We used to say at St. John's, it doesn't matter how many books you get through, it matters how many books get through you. Because you could speed read all the books in the curriculum, but if they're not getting through you, you aren't changed. And
Yeah.
similarly, we can upload the textbooks of every kind of piece of knowledge that humanity's created to a notebook LM or to a chat GPT, and we can synthesize it and then use it like a vending machine and get answers out of it, but it hasn't changed us. And
Mm.
so I'm always looking at what's the educational experience that's going to change us as people, because it's the good humanities generalists who are going to be proficient operators of AI. We're coming out of this phase, Rita, where deep specialization was really important. Where if your specialization was an inch wide and a mile deep, then you were valuable. But suddenly AI's given us all infinite skills. So we don't need to be a specialist. What is going to help people succeed in the future is being good generalists.
Mm.
There's this great book called Range, where it talks about how generalists will thrive in a specialized world. And this book makes the case that by having a wide skill set, then you can manage specialists effectively. But specialists don't necessarily make good leaders because they have a very narrow perspective. Having that wide perspective where you can incorporate a whole lot of points of view, that's going to help people succeed in the AI powered future.
Mm. I guess it's to bring it into that sphere of leadership, we often, or for me anyway, I often find myself working with leaders who have for many years acquired that deep specialist knowledge, probably through a technical field or profession. And then they find themselves in the world of leadership where, as you say, it's this generalist, the ability to be more of a generalist and to be broader is actually more valuable in that
Mhm.
world rather than that deep specialty. So um, in terms of AI, I've not heard that before. And it's super interesting. I think it's super interesting that we're going or getting into an era, and I wonder if it is a phase because at different times we go generalist, specialist, generalist, specialist. But I wonder, how much that will hold and what those skills of being a generalist really are in this kind of more modern world.
Yeah.
How do you see that changing? So when you think about going from that deep specialty into that more generalist, whether you're a leader or not, what do you see as the fundamental changes to the way that we work?
Yeah, well, I'm reading a really interesting book right now by Steven Shapiro, and it's called You're Not Playing with a Full Deck: Why the Coworkers That Drive You Nuts Are Your Secret Superpower. And he wrote this great book a few years ago called Personality Poker. And he talked about how there's four different personalities in a work environment, and he assigns them all to the suits of a deck of playing cards, and that the spades are one type of personality and the diamonds are really creative and the hearts are very empathetic, and that you need all of these different types of people on the team. And he makes the case that it's the people that hold the suits that you don't have. You might be very proficient in diamonds and clubs and you might really dislike spades people, but there's a reason why spades are effective on a team. And so the role of the leader is to deal out the hand well, to assign the right personality types onto a team and make sure that there's a team with the right composition of people who can achieve the stated goal. And being a good generalist, it helps you see not just your own suit in the playing cards, it helps you see all of the cards in the deck and how they can all be effective. Even if you personally don't like this type of person, you can see how they can be really effective for things that you don't necessarily know how to do very well.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's really that diversity of thought is what I'm hearing there, in particular that
Mhm.
cognitive diversity where we have an appreciation. not necessarily a like per se, but an appreciation of what that role, what that person brings to the team.
Yeah, yeah. And this is the great thing about AI is even if you don't have those particular capabilities yourself, you can ask AI to role play somebody who does.
Yeah.
How would an empathetic person handle this situation? And you might not choose to do things that way, but you can at least get that third party perspective that can help inform your own strategy.
Yeah, yeah. Super, super interesting. I love your comment before about the CEO of the future, and you mentioned that, the CEO of the future is largely, and if they wanted to, I guess they could, get a copy of the transcripts. I mean, I use a note taker in my coaching sessions and in my meetings, which is super valuable. Everybody that's participated walks away knowing exactly what the actions are.
Mhm.
In what other ways, Caelan, do you see that role of the CEO changing?
Gosh, the CEO of the future is I don't think the CEO needs to be an AI expert, but they do need to be learning about it. Donna Morris is the chief people officer of Walmart, and she says leaders are learning like everybody else is learning, and that the team needs to see their leaders jumping in and learning these tools more than anyone because they set the example, they set the pace for the culture. And so I think being good examples of how to bring AI into your personal work and also how to fail gracefully. It's one of the challenges in the workplace is you want to just put your best foot forward and share your victories all the time and hide your mistakes because you can be penalized for your mistakes. But part of learning is failing. And so I think this is a real opportunity for leaders in an AI powered future is to fail publicly. Because if a leader shares, oh, I tried this thing with AI and it was a total disaster, but then I did this thing and it all worked, that's going to give members of the team the confidence to experiment and explore and try things themselves.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, it's that failing, learning from failure and being a little bit more public, is one of those key tenets of psychological safety. So,
Yeah.
what I'm hearing you say there is that if the CEOs and those leaders of the organization can really role model that, then it actually increases the psychological safety for everybody else in the team, particularly because this new frontier means that we are trying different things. We're not always going to get it right. We're probably going to try it, drop it, try something else, etc. So that there is that inbuilt risk and failure and learning that's part of it.
Yeah, yeah, and risk is something that I hear a lot of leaders concerned about. I heard about an all hands meeting where everybody was on Zoom, and the meeting transcription notes are being taken. Can everybody shows up, and their own bots show up, so like dozens of people are getting transcriptions of this meeting, and then everybody leaves except for the senior leadership team, and they discuss sensitive information like salaries and who's getting fired, and the transcription notes are sent out to everybody. And so there's a lot of sensitivity to risk because there really are some risks with these new tools. And figuring out what's safe and what's not is part of the work of the leader. One of the exercises that I do in my workshops is we make a stoplight protocol where we'll have three different lists. We'll have a red list, a yellow list, and a green list. And the red list is these are all the things you can never do with AI. The yellow list is these are things you should check with somebody about. And the green list is these are things you can do, whether it's data or processes or applications. You make these three lists and then you give those to your team so that they know these things on the green list, I can go and do these. I can do these safely. Here's the sandbox where I can play. And so I think that's another role of the leader in an AI powered future is giving clear guidance for what is and isn't safe for their team to do with AI.
Yeah, it's such an important point because a lot of the clients that I work with, there is still uncertainty and, in fact, blanket rules which say we're not to use it at all until we've worked out from a governance perspective and a policy
Mhm.
perspective what's going to be most appropriate for our organization. The issue though they're running into is that they need to get there quickly, like set up a
Yeah,
policy, set up a framework, set up governance that even if it's
right.
not 100% right, it's going to get people covered for 80% of the time because people are using it anyway. They're just using it on their
Yeah.
personal mobile phones and personal laptops and devices.
Exactly. Yeah. And if we think about how the automobile was introduced, You know, when Henry Ford made the automobile and started mass manufacturing it, and there were automobiles everywhere, there was very minimal regulation. And because of that, there were some very tragic deaths. But imagine if we had done the opposite and we had over-regulated at the beginning and we said, okay, fenders need to be at least half a meter long and you got to have 6 belts, and we over-regulated for safety, it would have stifled innovation. And so Reid Hoffman, the CEO of LinkedIn, he just put out a book last year called Super Agency: What Could Possibly Go Right with Our AI Powered Future. And he talks about this evolution of technology and how when the automobile was rolled out, they used something called iterative deployment. And what iterative deployment is it's an understanding that you're not going to get it right the first time. You're going to put it out into market. You're going to learn what the mistakes are, and that you're going to do everything you can to mitigate the risks from those mistakes, but you're going to have those mistakes live where it matters. And as long as you're constantly iterating to improve, then those mistakes actually become the medium through which you improve your organization in the future.
Yeah, and I think that is building into the system that iteration. So we are learning as we go.
Yeah.
It picks up on what we just talked about, around that failing publicly. So we accept and we absolutely tolerate. Maybe we actually go looking for, let's try it
Yeah.
in a very experiential way, as opposed to it's got to be 100% before it hits, whatever it is, market
Yeah.
oriented.
Yeah, that celebration of failure is really encouraging to people. One of the things I do in my AI coaching academy is I run communities of practice, where I'll have all of the AI advocates in an organization or on a team come together once a week and we celebrate our failures. We also celebrate our wins, but we're very public and open about the things that we try that don't work, because when people see that people they really admire are failing and admitting it and learning from their mistakes, it gives them the confidence to do the same. And
Mm.
that willingness to be able to fail, that's a prerequisite for growth. You're not going to expand into anything new unless you're willing to bruise your knees along the way.
Yeah. Caelan, without breaching confidence, obviously, of that group, but can you give us a little bit of an indication of what are the common learnings? What are the mistakes, the mishaps, the challenges that people are experiencing that they are sharing in that forum?
There's a lot of challenges with integration, with getting the tools to talk to each other. A lot of times a lot of people are learning a lot of new technical skills right now. Because if you're wanting to set up an email automation that automatically adds events to your calendar and then sends a thank you, you're doing a lot of things outside of the scope of your normal role. And so there is a lot of technology troubleshooting that happens in those groups. But where I'm always trying to steer the conversation is how can we have a transformative conversation with a large language model partner? Because if I can teach somebody how to ask AI how to troubleshoot their issue, then that becomes the meta skill that allows them to learn anything that they want to learn.
Yeah. So it's yeah, integration is often a common one, which we hear with all sorts of things, right? Because we're all trying to bolt on and do different things. And I guess it's, the world we find ourselves in is that there are so many tools that can do lots of different things. I think the nirvana would be that we find something that could kind of do the whole lot. What's your view on that? Should people still be looking at different things that do components of the process or system really well, or should they be looking at more integrated systems that do everything?
Well, when people wrestle with this question, they're often wondering, what value do I have if AI can do all of my work? And it's really challenging thinking, well, if I could just get a robot to do all of this, then what need is there for me? Is my job safe? And then it comes down to scarcity. Oh my gosh, am I going to be able to feed my family? I like the perspective that Peter Diamandis brings. He's the author of Abundance: The Future is Better Than You Think. And he talks a lot about how we're changing from an input economy to an output economy, where we don't measure what you have, we measure what you can do. He says that the currency of our past economy has been money. That's how we measure capability and consumption. But in the economy of the future, he says we'll measure the economy with compute. And your agency, your ability to do more, is going to be the measure of your wealth. And so I think the ability to do exponentially more than you've done in the past, we're seeing this divergence right now between people who are going along on a linear scale as fast as they can, learning with their 3.5 pound meat computer. But then we have this other class of people who are becoming augmented with AI, and they're getting all sorts of capabilities and skills that they never had before. And so this does two things. The first thing it does is it removes the need for them to do the busy work that robots are better at anyway. And so it allows them to focus on the uniquely human work. But the second thing it does, Rita, is it gives them additional peripheral skill sets that they had never had access to before. And so this is why I talk about the exponential divergence between people who are moving on a linear scale and they're just improving incrementally, and people who are improving on an exponential scale. And it's really hard for a human mind to conceive of the difference between a linear growth and exponential growth. 20 steps in a linear fashion where each one is 1 meter, that'll get you across the cafe. But 20 steps exponential, where each one is twice the length it was before, that'll get you around the globe.
Mm.
And that's the scale of change that we're dealing with right
Yeah.
now. And
Yeah.
so that's why I'm so excited to see when people jump in and start learning AI, because it shows that they're ready for the exponential growth that's coming.
Yeah, and there's not a it is a mindset of more and abundance as opposed to scarcity, because it's looking at I love what you said there, because it is about the value. So as a human, what's the value that I bring to this, as opposed to being potentially feeling scared or minimized by what this thing will come in and replace. That's really, I mean, when we
Mhm.
boil it down, they're the two schools of thoughts with lots of variation in between. But if you really boil it down to people's fear, I reckon that
Yeah.
speaks so clearly to a lot of people's fear when they really consider it.
Yeah. Well, it's a question of survival for them,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's what our jobs are. Our jobs enable us to survive, but that's the purpose of the economy of the past. We focused on survival as the metric, but now we're moving into an economy where we focus on significance.
Mm.
I think the future that we're going to see, Rita, and I'm optimistic. There's a lot of different perspectives on what AI could do. I am unashamedly optimistic about the future. I think everybody's going to have enough to eat, and there's going to be a good social floor, but that some people who choose to be exponentially more impactful than others, that they're going to see some fabulous capabilities. And we're going to start rewarding people based on how well they use these new capabilities. Because I think survival is going to be solved in short order. And so the people who have a fear about survival, they'll find themselves moving from a focus on survival to a focus on significance. Because I think in the next 10 years, that's how our society is going to be structured. I hope. That's my optimistic hope.
Yeah, yeah. I think we all need to channel a little bit more of that optimism, even on those grey days where it feels all heavy. Caitlin, can you give us an insight, like on a you know a time frame over a week or a day? You're running your own business, obviously. You're dealing with leaders. You're dealing with different organizations. How are you using AI as your partner? Can you give us a little bit of an insight in a day in the life, or a week in the life? But how are you using
Sure.
it as your partner?
Sure. Well, a lot of things are still the same. I still have in-person AI coaching sessions, and I've been a business coach for decades now. And so having that scheduled time where, okay, I'm going to sit down with this person for an hour. I'm going to ask them great questions, and I'm going to do what I can to help them transform. That hasn't changed. But all the mechanics around that have definitely changed. I used to spend 3 times as much time in admin as
Mm.
I do now. Writing up my notes, sending a structured email that says, this is what we talked about, and this is what I want you to do, and this is what you said your expectations were for our next conversation. I used to have to do all that manually. And now a lot of that manual work, from archiving the recordings to doing the synthesis of the different transcripts of a client over time, that's all automated. For the basic stuff, it's sent out automatically. Here's the recording, here's the transcript, here's your links, because that's mundane. But the interpretation of that material, where I sit back at the end of the month and I say, what did this client do this month that shows me they're different than last month? That takes my creative curation. I might upload all the transcripts to a large language model, and then have a conversation about it. And so I use it a lot as a thinking partner. Whenever I have an idea that I know I need to develop, I used to sit down and journal by hand because that's a great way for me to think through something is to write through it. And now I'll open up a large language model and I'll open up voice mode and I'll say, tell me about this topic. Or I'll give it a URL and I'll say, tell me about this page. And I have a couple of starter prompts where I'm just building context before I actually ask for, okay, now I want this deliverable at the end. And so my AI conversations have become an extension of how I think. So that instead of thinking by myself, just me and my notebook, now I have access to all of the information that's ever been produced by humanity, run through the most cutting edge technology that we have, and I think through that.
And what have been the most significant changes for you as a result of using it as your thinking partner? Like what have you noticed about your productivity, your creativity? What are the big shifts you're seeing?
My speed to production is much faster. It used to take 3 hours a week for me to write a newsletter, and now it's down to 1 hour.
Yeah.
And when I have ideas for new intellectual property, I have a pink sheet bot,
Yeah.
and I've taught it how to make pink sheets with me. And so used to, I would have to make a pink sheet, this thinking tool that we learned how to do in Thought Leaders Business School. It used to, I'd do it by hand, and it would take a whole lot of time. But now I have a custom GPT where I'll say, hey, I have these pieces. Help me work on the other pieces. I'm really good at the metaphors and the statements, and I'm not very good at the explanations and the studies. And so I focus on doing the pieces that I'm really good at, and I have AI help me with the pieces that I'm not good at. And so in some ways, it's like a crutch because maybe I'd be better at the pieces I'm not good at if I had to keep doing it by hand. But I've also been doing this not long enough that I know my strengths. And so I can use AI to bolster my weaknesses by focusing on the things that I'm really good at and using my AI thinking partner to help me with the things that I'm not good at.
Yeah, I mean that is fantastic because it plays right into the strength-based work that we do, with
Hmm.
leaders around
Yeah.
leverage, be aware of the strengths that you have, leverage them, and don't pay attention so much to your gaps. I mean, the gaps will be there, and unless it's, a gap that's creating a massive impact for other people, the research tells us don't waste time really trying to close that gap. Be aware of it, be aware of the impacts, but the more time we spend on those weaknesses, we're largely, we're going to get little return. Whereas if we focus on those strengths, we get that exponential growth in that strength, in the strengths.
Yeah. And I think this is why AI is so helpful is because it gets you 80% of the way to expertise. And for your weaknesses, if you can get 80% of the way there, it's sufficient for a lot of use cases. But for your expertise, I think this is where people get really afraid. Like, will AI do the things that I'm an expert in, so I'm no longer valid? But what we find, Rita, is that the areas of expertise are actually where AI operators have the most impact because for example, I'm a website designer. I was a web designer for a long time. I'm really good at websites, but I don't really do them anymore. But I can manage an AI agent to make fantastic websites. You can manage an AI agent to make a website that's 80% of the way there because anybody can. It's that last 20% that requires mastery and expertise where the AI powered professional of the future is going to be able to take it that extra mile. And so I think we might see a real increase in the value of premium where something is really done by an expert. Because if anybody can get 80% of the way there, the ability to get to 100% of the way there, that's something that still requires human expertise.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's made it much more accessible, right? To do things
Yeah.
that the once upon a time we wouldn't even contemplate doing. But it is still that, that expert touch is required at the end to really get it then to that 100%.
Yeah.
Caelan, in terms of if I think about, the job of the leader, which is to lead their teams, lead organizations, lead themselves, which, is obviously first. Um, how do you see what advice do you give to leaders that are wanting to partner with AI, as you've talked about in that strategic thinking partnership, in making them more productive? What other ways can leaders really be using AI to increase their ability to be more deliberate in how they lead?
I think it comes down to intention. because an AI could lead, it could do all the mechanics of leadership, but is it leading in the right direction? And that's something that requires human distinction. The deliberate leader themselves, they know the direction they're going to. There's this file in AI agents called soul.md, and it's a markdown file where when you make an AI agent, you give it a soul. You literally give it a soul, and every time it does, runs a response. It reads a series of files. It reads its agent file, its identity file, the user file, so it knows about you, and it reads its soul file. What do you put in that soul? I
Mm.
think that's the role of the deliberate leader, is to determine what is the proper direction for this AI powered tool to go. Because if you can go in any direction at infinite speed, the ability to choose direction becomes more rare and therefore more valuable.
Mm. Yeah. And that intention and direction, oh gosh, that's fascinating. Like you just got me stuck on soul. Like I never really thought that. So when you're saying it's given a soul, is it given like a personality and a code? Like tell me a little bit more about this. I'm curious.
Yeah, well, any AI agent is going to be vanilla. It's going to be the great average of everything that's in its training data. And then as you curate your AI agent towards your type of work, it's going to be different than my AI agent. They're going to have different roles, they're going to have different responsibilities, they're going to have different intentions and different goals. And the soul file is one of the ways that we make that distinction. There's this new thing that happened in AI recently called 𝗵𝗶𝗀. Have you heard this
No.
before? 𝗵𝗶𝗀. It revolutionized AI. It's only been out for a couple of months. It came out on 25 November 2025. This guy named Peter Steinberger, who had a successful exit years ago. He took a few years off. He got really buff, and he touched grass for a bunch of years, and then he came back and started vibe coding. And he vibe coded 41 failed projects before he made 𝗵𝗶𝗀. And 𝗵𝗶𝗀 is an AI agent that has its own computer. You don't install 𝗵𝗶𝗀 on your own computer because that's a big security breach. If an AI agent can get in your emails, and just think about the Matrix. There's all sorts of havoc that an agent
Mhm.
can do.
Yeah.
But if you give it its own contained environment, like my 𝗵𝗶𝗀, I have in a contained environment right here. This
Yeah.
Mac Mini belongs to my AI agent,
Yeah.
and he follows my instructions and then works autonomously to complete tasks. And his soul is different than the other 𝗵𝗶𝗀 agent I have on a VPS, on a virtual private server. So it's up in the cloud. But this one I have installed on a piece of hardware. So even if the internet goes down, I have a large language model and I have an agent. And each one of these has different purposes and different capabilities. And I want them to get good at different things. And so I've focused one of them to start focusing on these kinds of activities, and another one to start focusing on those kinds of activities. Because we know that expertise is built up through experience. And by using something in agentic design called reflection, I'm able to have these agents do a daily reflection on their activities and their tasks and proactively make notes on how to get better. And the learnings from that reflection, that goes into the soul.
Yeah.
And so every day they add a new entry into their soul file that helps them curate the direction of their own growth.
That's not a bad practice for humans, I reckon, Caelan.
Right.
If we
That's
have
what
a
daily
moment,
journaling
like,
does for us.
yeah, well, imagine that. I mean, we don't really include that as, well, certainly not in the workplaces that I either worked in or led. Did we ever have that? But imagine if we had that moment of just daily reflection. What went well today? What didn't? How do I use it to get better? That's
Yeah.
gold. That is gold.
Yeah. Well, I learned about that from somebody named Jack Canfield. And Jack Canfield has written a bunch of success-focused books, and he has this exercise that he talks about called a victory log. And he says at the end of your day, just write a short list of all your victories. Because there might be a lot of little ones that you would just gloss over because you moved on to the next thing. But having that moment of reflection at the end of the day to say, oh, yeah, and I finally got that tax thing taken care of.
Mm.
Oh, and I got that thing shipped off at the post office that I'd been putting off for 6 weeks, and that's finally done. And just reminding yourself of those victories, it helps you build your confidence, and it reminds you that everything you're doing is progressing you towards your goals.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Look, I think human nature, we do like to see, we do like the feeling of that. It's obviously the dopamine hit that comes from it. It's why, and I'm not alone in this, it's why I will write things down in my to-do list after I've completed them, for the satisfaction of then just drawing the line through it,
Yep.
right? We look for that. We look for that progression. I've done it, on a really hard day. It's actually lovely to go back and go, it was hard, but these are all the things that I've achieved today. So having your own
Mhm.
victory log, I think, is pretty cool.
Yeah.
We're gonna go and chat, or we're gonna go and have a look a little bit more at 𝗵𝗁 and all of these. But this has been such a great conversation, Caelan. You've given us a bunch of things to think about, but also I think what's really come out for me from this conversation is how leaders can use it to partner. And rather than
Mhm.
be worried or scared that it's going to come for us and come for our jobs, it's about, as you say, what's your intention around how you want to use it? How do you want to be deliberate around it? And then really using it as that partner to do all those, the role plays, the reflection, the research, all of those things that help leaders that are time poor.
Yeah, yeah, and because people are time poor, I'm going to share one exercise that I find the most fruitful, and that's using voice mode. Have you ever used voice mode in AI? Well, I'm
I've
just going to
dabbled,
dem
yeah, go
yeah,
for it.
I'm going to demonstrate it real quick. So I've got my phone right here, and oh, it just came. It'll come back in just a second. Um, I really like doing this on my phone. And so when I'm walking a dog or I'm taking a drive, I'll go and I'll put my phone up in up on the dashboard. Come on, phone. I saw you come up. There we
Yeah,
go. So if you type something into chat, and I'm here in Chat GPT, you see that black arrow over on the
yep,
side? Watch how that changes to this squiggly button. That's voice mode. It's different than the microphone. So the microphone, if I press the microphone, it will transcribe voice to text, but that's not what we want. So I'll stop that so you can see what the microphone does. It's just dictation. It
yep.
transcribes voice to text. But if I take all this text out and I get this squiggly mode, watch what happens here. Oh, come on, don't do this in the demo. All right, 1 second. My cable.
As that's coming up, Caelan, a couple of colleagues are using it. So as you say, as that strategic thinking partner to have a conversation with, and they're saying it's
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah, it's revolutionary. So I'm gonna hit this black squiggly button. Apparently, I need to upgrade my cable. How offensive. Well, here, maybe I'll switch over. No, I've got it. Okay, I'm gonna hit that black squiggly button. And now I'm gonna have a hands-free conversation. Hey, can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear, Caelan. I'm ready when you are. Just go for it.
I want you to act as my coach and ask me questions one at a time about my business.
Let's get to it. First question. What's your
And now we can just go back and forth. But the trick is you got to get in the habit of being out on a walk or out
Mm.
on a drive and just taking out and doing the couple of things. And then you can have a verbal hands-free conversation about anything you like. And it doesn't matter what it is. You don't have to have a really impactful conversation. Just getting in the habit and asking, tell me about the latest news on this topic, or tell me about how to make my favorite recipe, or tell me what I should watch on Netflix. Just getting in the habit of that hands-free conversation, I think that'll be revolutionary for leaders.
Yeah, and I know that many of us like learning that way. So even, listening to podcasts, as we're recording obviously one right now, but even listening to audio books, it's become such a easy method to learn and to pick things up as you are walking or, cooking or whatever it is that you might be doing. So good tips.
Yeah,
I'm going to go and use that and a little bit more because I've played with it, but I think it could be a much better strategic thinking
great. Pro
partner.
tip, if you
Mm.
have headphones with a microphone in it, then you can walk around. It just looks like you're having a phone
Yeah.
conversation with somebody.
Great. We don't look like anything else is going on
Yeah.
there. That's right. Oh, Caelan, thank you so much. Thanks for obviously thank you for being a guest. I really enjoyed this conversation. But thank you for all those little tips and tricks that you've given us. It's hugely, hugely beneficial. So the AI Coaching Academy, we're going to pop the links in so people can find out a little bit more. If you send us a link, we'll pop it in on the show notes. Does that work for you?
Sounds great. Yeah, yeah. It's at
Excellent.
AI-coaching.academy. I've got a bunch of games in there. I've got some free things that you can free workshop replays, and I also have some group coaching programs in there as well.
Beautiful. All right, we'll definitely put that in the show notes. Caelan Huntress, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Rita. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Take care. Thank you. Hey, that was a wonderful conversation with Caelan Huntress, all things AI for leaders. Caelan has given us some great productivity tips and hacks. He's given us an insight into how he uses AI as his strategic thinking partner. It's super straightforward. So I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to encourage you to give it a go if you haven't already. The work of leadership is challenging, it's time consuming, and I don't know about you, but there's always a running to-do list with never enough time to do it. So if we can employ these tools and really augment how we use AI, use it as a partner, not be scared of it, I reckon there's a lot of upside to that. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Caelan.